5. Okay, Jared, hit me with this thought one more time. Say that again.
Okay, so today on the episode, we're going to talk about crypto news, Grayscale, and Jerome Powell. And what I was just saying right before we got on was that if you're into crypto, and we have a good example here because Aussie is a northern neighbor to us up in Canada.
Is that what we're calling Canada?
Yeah, it's North Mexico.
Northern neighbors. Okay.
But what I was saying is that if you're into crypto and you're not in the United States and you're not from the United States, you're literally more in tune with what the Federal Reserve is doing, what Jerome Powell is saying, what Gary Gensler is saying, then I would say 97% of people that actually live in the United States, they have no idea what the Fed is. They have no idea what the SEC is. People in the United States think the SEC is the Southeastern Conference for college football. They don't.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, the SEC, baby. So I guess it's just kind of like, it's fascinating too when you travel the world and you're from the United States, because many people around the world, just in general, this is outside of crypto, have a better idea of United States history than people from the United States. And this is probably by design on some level, if you want to like get into that, but it's very fascinating. So now when we talk about monetary policy, fiscal policy, and we can dive right into Jerome. I only saw a couple in getting ready for the episode. I only saw a couple of the things that he was saying. And basically he said, quote, "The future for interest rates is going to be bumpy." And all I could picture was like, if you're in a car and it's bumpy, it's going up and down. And so he's like, they're going to raise 0.5, then they're going to raise 0.25, then they're going to raise 0.5. So anyways, maybe I can throw it to Austin, and Austin, please, can you fill us in with some Jerome Powell quotes, and then your thoughts on maybe where that is going to take the crypto market, and then tap in Grant to maybe then we can shift to the tweet we were also just talking about.
Yeah. So give us the highlights. And real quick, as Austin pointed out, I completely misspelled Grayscale. So forgive me for that, folks. But go ahead. Jeff, I haven't seen this guy show up in weeks,
dude. He's just been waiting. He's been waiting to just turn the screw. And Jeff, if you're hearing me here, I figured out a way for us to record, so we'll be in touch because you have the laughing otter. Anyways, that's an aside. But sorry, Austin, can you?
Austin,
Jerome Powell. Yeah, we're gonna go to the Canadian to tell us about what the Federal Reserve is doing
in America.
Yeah, so Jerome Powell had a big speech and then a huge question and answer session in front of not Congress, but one of the subcommittees today. And basically he kind of pulled back a lot of the statements he'd made at the last Federal Reserve meeting. So talking about how disinflation was going to be, and how we were going to start seeing potentially lower, just 25 basis point rate hikes. They were talking about only a couple rate hikes, not huge, not a much more extended rate hike period. But he kind of pulled most of those statements back. He said, we're seeing a reversal in disinflation. So inflation's coming back up. They were considering 50 basis points again. So they kind of moved to 25 basis points, and he's now kind of pulled back that statement and saying, hey, we're considering 50 basis points for this next meeting. He even said that expectations for what the top level interest rate was going to be is going to raise. So they were originally talking somewhere in the 5.5, 5.25 region. We're now we're talking in the region of potentially 6 or 6.25% interest. Yeah. And we're talking about interest rate hikes potentially into July. We were previously talking May, maybe June. Now July, even September are in the picture. He even made a ton of comments about blockchain and cryptocurrency based off prompting from Congress. And he says that there are real concerns about permissionless public blockchains. The reason is because they have been susceptible to fraud, money laundering, and all of those things.
Like the US dollar.
Yeah, he said, in a world of appropriate regulation where stablecoin activity gets the same regulation as comparable products in different places, then there certainly could be a place for stablecoins in our financial services sector. So kind of two differing statements where he sees concerns with blockchain as it is right now, but says that if blockchain products were to get the same regulation as comparable, I guess, non-blockchain products, financial products, then he could see their place in the financial services sector. So that's really interesting. And he kept re-emphasizing same regulation as comparable products. Whenever he was prompted by a congressman or congresswoman to comment on blockchain, that was his go-to line. He did, however, say that we need to not stifle crypto innovation and that it is important to our economy to have innovation. So lots of different kind of statements from him, some that really are like, oh, pull back the market. Are we going to see stable coins heavily regulated? Are we going to see interest rates hikes all the way till the end of the year? But also, hey, we see the role in blockchain and we shouldn't stifle crypto innovation. So very conflicting speech from Jay Powell today.
Conflicting is the right word. He sounds like the ultimate politician. I said something and he come away saying, what did he even actually say? And now that neutrality itself is kind of weakened the market today, just the neutrality. But I can't believe he's saying disinflation's not working. It's like I just saw home prices. So when I watch home prices regularly as a real estate investor, and we were just moving on a property over the weekend. And so I was checking all the prices, and this was the first month in 6 that the prices, the estimates ticked up, and it was only by 3 to 5%, give or take. And so one could argue, see, look, inflation is still going. It's like, no, real estate's different than consumer goods. Real estate, from a purchase perspective, rents might be different, but from a purchase perspective, it shows, oh, there's a new interest in buyers, meaning there's a new influx of contracts on properties, which drives that price up a little bit, which means they think they can buy, which means it's a positive sentiment in general. But for him to come in and say this, do you think he has the public's best interest in mind, actually?
So Congress people asked him that exact question, kind of along the lines of unemployment rate. And current predictions are that unemployment could rise 1% this year. And so Elizabeth Warren and other Congress people were saying, do you want to put 2 million people out of work? And he's trying to curb supply side or demand side inflation with the only tool he has. His only tool is monetary policy through interest rate hikes. And so that's his only tool to really deal with the issue. And so I don't think he's trying to hurt the economy. He's just trying to curb inflation, curb spending.
I mean, that's like saying, I'm going to come up with a fun analogy here. That's like saying,
can't you curb inflation by pulling monetary supply out of the system? There's adding of dollars and removing of dollars from the system as well. There's interest rates. And I guess the interest rates is the mechanism by which he presumes cash gets
the interest rate. By increasing the interest rate, he's slowing the velocity of money. So in essence, kind of doing what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Because he's basically killing the incentive for anyone to go basically create debt because it's become more expensive. But I think Austin is being really, really nice to my buddy JP by saying that by, lowering, well, how did Austin just put it? That was the most diplomatic thing I've ever heard. It was like, he's not trying to crush the economy, but that's like a symptom of or it's like what's that, collateral damage of the issue. I guess it's kind of like, if Grant's like, hey, come over the house, like we have to save the house or something, and we have to break a window to get in, and there's a fire, and I end up breaking the window and throwing a grenade inside. It's like, well, we had to get the kitten out, because like that, there's no way. Like we've been in this weird thing where it's like, are we going to go into a recession or are we going to have runaway inflation? And it's always been, his mandate has been to crush inflation. Therefore, bringing on the recession, which in theory, at least in theory, which I don't think is actually ever happens, should hopefully correct some things in the market. That doesn't end up happening though, because they're going to start printing money. You're saying that I think he's going to probably raise rates up through the end of the year. He said he's not going to stop, he's not going to bring rates down at least until 2024. So I'm thinking by next summer, right after the halving, ladies and gentlemen, we might get some printing. And once we have the printing, then we're in a different place. But I do think in order to get there, he's going to have to crush. Like,
what are you calling the printing?
Quantitative easing. I'm saying like they're going to start printing money again. And I saw this morning, and I just wanted to share it. So I'm going to do some boomer shit and hold up pictures of the thing.
Oh Lord. Oh God.
It's backwards. What does it say?
Sorry. Well, it's the image from Breaking Bad, but it says holding cash will be a winning strategy in 2023, investors say. So that only leads me to believe that investors, the market is basically preparing for increased rate hikes and, the market to kind of go down so you can buy in, which is interesting because I don't know. I feel like Grant and I were having a different conversation not even 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
And then Jay Powell comes on and he just, freestyles for a bit and then the market tanks. So.
Well, and Jeff gets to something really important here that I think we do need to address, not only for Web3, but also including Web3. Jerome Powell has, I think, Austin, to your point, it's his job to not make inflation happen. It's not his job necessarily to offset recession. That's not like the prerogative of the Federal Reserve. They are called to. We look to them. When we think recession, we think Federal Reserve. But the truth is it's monetary supply. And it plays a key role, the federal funds rates and the monetary supply plays a key role. But I think it plays a key role by default. But we look for them and say, is it bad news or worse news? Is it bad? And that's generally the outlook. And it has been for a long time. Well, is it neutral news? Neutral news is not great news, but it's better than the worst news. And worst news is it's in 5 points, 6 points, and neutral news, it's at 2.5, a quarter point. And it's like, but a quarter point is still, what are we doing? And Jeff points to this, makes this point that resonated with me. Where can the entrepreneurial and the innovative look, not for something on the opposite side of the spectrum, positive news, encouraging news, but almost on a different axis, and think, how do I get more innovative? How do I dig deeper? Like, okay, I hear what Jerome Powell's saying. Yes, I hear what recession is. Yes, I hear about inflation. Now, where are the voices? Maybe it's people like Rob Paul. Where are the voices of people that are encouraging you to keep going, keep building, stay strong? And I don't just mean like influencers. I even mean like economic metrics. Like, what economic data are you looking at, either of you, that make you go, that's encouraging, I'm going to keep pressing?
If I'd say, the unemployment rate in the U.S. is at the lowest it's ever been in 50 some
or 60
odd years.
Yeah.
So to me, that's, if I were as an average American, for an average American, I think that's great news for your economy and for.
What are you laughing about, Jared? Jared's just laughing. What are you laughing?
Because he said as an average American, we've inceptioned him to think he's a gringo, which I love. So come on board, Austin.
As an average Canadian, we know what he's saying.
Yeah, come on. It's been a long day. I've literally been stuck in an American's brain all day, okay?
It's horrible.
That is a horrible thing to be. When you're Canadian, I imagine it's like anxiety ridden to be stuck in an American's head all day. But I hear you. So yes, job numbers have been very encouraging. Where else do you go? And maybe let's get rid of economic data. Where do you guys go for either affirmation, encouragement, or signs of hope that your visions, your dreams can happen? I know that's a very obtuse question, but I think it's important because the entrepreneur, let me tell you something. The entrepreneur, and I'm around entrepreneurs all day with Catapult and my clients and stuff, they're shriveling on the vine. And they get around other entrepreneurs and when I say they're shriveling on the vine, meaning they know that what's between their ears determines whether or not they create another job. Not what Jerome is saying, not even what the bank is saying. It's their innovativeness, their creativeness, whether or not they're shifting. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, I just want to call out Jeff. If you want to put what Jeff just said
I'll
up on the screen.
I'll pull it up.
You guys literally just said the same thing. Jeff says true entrepreneurs ignore it all because innovation happens at the micro level, not the macro level.
That is so good.
I mean, the reality of it is, and I just put up a podcast about this, I put up a video on YouTube about this, but it's like right now it's a super lonely time to be an investor, especially if you're a crypto investor. Like in my IRL world, my father, I think, is going to pick up some Bitcoin eventually. He's been looking at the market. He feels like it's a good time. One of my other buddies buys, I think, $10 of Bitcoin every day from Swan. And then that's kind of it. And I'm talking 2 people in my entire IRL world are buying Bitcoin or thinking about the future positively, in the sense that they're buying now in a down market, knowing that there will be an up market. And I just think that that's a super bullish move. Brian just put something in there, so I'll probably read that out.
We'll get to that real quick, but finish this thought.
I guess my thought is like, it's just being around other entrepreneurs. It's being in the chats that we're in. It's like talking to people like Jeff. If you talk to Jeff, this guy could be on fire and that dude's positive as shit, like all the time. So I just think it's talking to other people.
Well, and a little bit of insight for Jeff may or may not know this. Brian may or may not know this. You guys definitely know this. I have a web design company. I'm also like a very small partner in a bookkeeping company we helped co-found years ago, and they're still cranking and doing really good. But that's because they innovated 9 months ago, like pivoted their entire service model, and they focused on a niche, and good on them. And then we've got an assortment of investments. Our largest chunks are in real estate. For those watching, these gentlemen know. And then like it's crypto from there. I'm sorry, it's TradFi from there and it's crypto from there, but we're trying to get those flipped right now just with dollar cost averaging and trying to kind of rebalance our portfolio. That being said, I was invited to a networking meeting, a mastermind meeting. And we used to do this mastermind with the same group of people like 2 years ago. And I quit. I was like, no, I can't do this. These guys are talking too small-mindedness. But I have an affection for the individuals themselves. They're awesome people. And they said, hey, guys, they had let the thing wane. They decided to fire it back up. I showed up today and I told them, I sat down and the first thing I said was, I'm here if we're talking about bigger picture because the market, and this is what we're talking about, the market is demanding that we all, and they're mostly all creatives, high designers, someone that does like high design. Like, you know how Steve Jobs used to have the PowerPoints when he did his thing? One of the designers in the group is the designer for the COO of Accenture. And that might not mean anything to you guys, but Accenture,
that is massive.
So Google subs a lot of their technology to Accenture. Like we hear Google does X, Y, and Z. They've really done that by outsourcing that to companies like Accenture. And my buddy is like the personal friend of the COO. And when he has presentations for Airbus or VW, my guy does his PowerPoints, his keynotes and stuff. And he's been following him to Capgemini, which was like a $2 billion buyout before. And so he's with him now. And so these guys are, when I say high lid designers, they're mega high lid in the creative space. They're not just like website guys. They were all saying to a person, I have got to change my business model entirely. Entirely. And not just because of the macro, like Brian's saying, and like Jeff is saying, but they know that the macro still does affect how they handle the micro. And so like, I'm always looking for sources of inspiration. And you said it, the reason I told that whole story, Jared, is to affirm, yes, I had to go around these entrepreneurs and say, this is how they're putting their skills to their own business models now and doing, Jarrett and I were talking to someone that amounts to a money guy VC sort of stuff yesterday. Over the last 48 hours, me and Jarrett were both talking to, money people because of some projects Jarrett and I are working on, actually. And this guy, Jarrett, the project we're working on, we're talking about putting together sneak peek, hashtag keep it to yourself fund. Basically, the Berkshire Hathaway of Web3 is kind of something that we're toying with, and more to come on that. But my point is I sat with these guys, and these guys were like, yeah, we're getting out of our business entirely and launching our own thing. For the same reasons, Jarrett, you and I are kind of talking about some of this. So I think it's very affirming to hear from y'all and Jeff and others that get around other entrepreneurs, because they do understand your best interest. Let's bring up Brian. Broom, who wants to hit this?
I'll take it, and then I'm going to pass it to Austin, because I feel like he really loves the Federal Reserve. So this is the central.
I think that's a misconception of my attitude towards the Federal
I assume
Reserve.
on the back of your right tricep it just says Jerome.
JP.
Yeah,
JP
Jerome, and then
to
Powell.
1%. JP to 1%. Yeah,
2% for life. Brian Naughton says, this is the central point with the whole macro debate for me. We labor under the serious misapprehension that the Fed has the best interests of the American people and economy in mind. That's why their reactions seldom make sense. Same thing with the SEC. The SEC being the Security Exchange Commission, not the Southeastern Collegiate.
Southeastern Conference.
Southeastern Conference. Yeah. Anyways, Austin, take it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Federal Reserve has a dual mandate: manage inflation and ensure maximum employment. They've got a dual mandate, and often those mandates kind of conflict. That's what happens. So it's not necessarily that they don't have the best interest of the American economy in mind, because I would say, based on current economic data, the American economy is incredibly strong. Inflation is very high. And so I don't know if I agree with that statement. Your statement about the SEC, I 100% agree with. I think they don't really have the best interest of the American people or the economy in mind. They have the interest of lining their pockets in mind, really.
Well, I would say the Federal Reserve is similar. If we remember The Creature from Jekyll Island, we refer to this now and again. If you have not, grabbed that book or searched for one of the many documentaries about the founding of the Federal Reserve. It was originally created to prevent bank panics. And that was the public face, but it was started by who? Bankers. It is a private institution that is an extension of the federal government. It is no more federal than the FedEx, the mail service. That's just its name. But we sub out our monetary management to them. And there is conspiracy mixed in there, of course. I'm actually not that opposed to a conspiratorial origin, right? Like, because something can evolve. Its mandate now is twofold: to manage inflation and to basically monetary policy. But who does it benefit? I think it only benefits Americans by proxy. And what I mean by that is this: the best slaves are ones that don't know they're slaves. And we are, for lack of a better term, if you want to get to matrix language, we are batteries to the greatest economic and power engine that has ever been. So long as kind of we're middle class and below, maybe middle upper class and below. And so long as we are like just at the edge of survival and thrival and like even entrepreneurial behaviors, I'm just going to get a little further ahead and a little further ahead. That economic energy, as Jarrett often refers, is just enough to keep the engine going. And so I think the Federal Reserve does have a dual mandate to keep that system in stasis. And so as we reach for more, when I was growing up, like making $48,000 a year was huge. And now you talk to young people, and if they're not, what is a high value man? A guy that makes $1 million a year and owns a yacht. And you're like, what? But like decent salaries, $120,000 a year, but that's like what they're expecting when they start. And you're like, what? Well, the goalpost does always have to keep going because inflation will always keep going and prices will always keep going up. I think the Federal Reserve is meant to kind of pull the reins back and forward and back to keep a level pace so that we all stay in the system. So is that our best interests? Well, in theory, I'm not Haiti. Have you got, I mean, we talked, Jarrett's familiar with Haiti, Aussie, I'm sure you're familiar with global stuff in general, but like Haiti is stratified now. It will never catch up to America. Now, it might get pulled up as the rest of the globe gets pulled up, but it is stratified as far as I'm concerned. And I think a lot of national and international, like IMF, all of these are in place, I believe, to keep everything stratified. Yes, let's keep making things better for the poor, but let's make sure they don't catch up to the moderate or the rich.
I totally agree with the IMF, with your statement about the IMF. I mean, there's a reason why the World Economic Forum and the IMF have so heavily opposed El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin. And
a lot of heat. Yeah,
and why they've strongly discouraged other countries adopting the same kind of policies because they see how Bitcoin could help basically boost these countries out of that same stasis and pulls them out of the debt system, out of the debt monetary system. And so I think, I think especially at the world level, that is totally correct. And yes, I think the Federal Reserve is there to basically jockey the horses, keep things kind of going at the right pace. And so I'm with you there 100%. I mean, Jeff, I totally agree. I'm constantly talking to people who are building and have never stopped.
This is the light of hope.
I am building. I'm working with 3 other guys, and we're talking about working with Grant and Jarrett, and we're building some really incredible stuff. And building with incredible people and smart people is exactly what helps encourage everybody from going forward. And I think that's why I'm super excited about 2023 and 2024 and 2025.
Well, I got to say this, and then Jarrett, I'm going to hand the mic to you to tackle this comment real quick from Brian, the lovely Brian. I want to hype that Aussie a little bit here because I mentioned this mastermind group I got a part of this morning, and I've mentioned their backgrounds already. I won't open that up again. They asked me, hey, Grant, you kind of disappeared from the co-working space we're all a part of. And I see you're doing a lot with crypto. You do the Not Crypto Bro show. Now you're doing Friday Finances. Are you not doing web design anymore? I said, time out. I stopped circulating in some of these groups because they thought too small. You know why I love Web3? I have yet to find a community that looks at the world to the left and right of them IRL in real life and goes, well, that sucks. That sucks. That could be better. All right, I'm going to go build something. And it's like, where are you building it? I'm building it in the metaverse. I'm building it in Sandbox. I'm building it in Decentraland. I'm building it on a layer of technology that no one else can touch. And Jarrett said it the other day, and it warmed my heart, and it's very true. I think I talked to these 2 guys more than anyone else on the planet now, and we've never met in person. And we met because of Web3. We met on the technological layer. So I'm involved in crypto and Web3 for a lot of reasons, but primarily the hope that Jeff is talking about. There's more builders per capital. There's more people who are operating maybe with a bit of like desperation to fix their lifestyle, like a lot of the African developers for crypto and Web3. But really, what's underneath all that is a seed of hopefulness that I love in entrepreneurial spirit. So that's big time. Jarrett, why don't you tackle one of these things here that we're looking at?
Yeah, let me.
Yeah, or make
Brian,
a comment. Yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to say that I said that to a couple people today, and they were like, well, you know, what's been going on? I was just catching up with someone. I was like, well, I literally talked to this dude I've never met, and we met on the internet. And it sounds like some like dating scheme. He's going to like, you know, kill me or something. Because when I say how I talk to Grant all the time on WhatsApp and we just call each other and talk for like 20 minutes here or there, people are like, that's so weird. And then I'm like, is it? I guess when I say it out loud, it's super strange, but it's now just like what happens, you know, because Grant's up at 4 a.m. at the gym. So like if I'm up at 5, I'm like, hey, Grant. He's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that's really the beauty of Web3. And the beauty of Web3 is you can be building a billion different things. And it's also like the barrier to build is so low.
Yeah.
I still think the barrier to build in Web 2 is so low. Like you can just fire up a Wix website, you know, buy a domain, start just selling something, you know, but people will come up with excuses and, oh, the internet, oh, I don't know how to leverage it. But let me go into Brian's comment if you want to bring that up. It says, well defended Aussie. I believe that this was your comments about the Fed. He said, I kind of see it as the grassroots. I kind of see it at the grassroots level. If you were losing your purchasing power because of quantitative easing, the last thing you need is an extra $1,000 or $2,000 a month to fund or to fund, I believe, on your mortgage payments. Lennon referred to this as grinding the middle classes between the millstones of inflation and taxation. And I guess I just wanted to make a comment before we kind of go on, but it brings on this and it talks, Grant, exactly what you were mentioning. And that is that first of all, actually, let me go back. On this episode, this is a milestone episode because Aussie is now identifying as a gringo, and Grant went on a tirade that if you took out of context, you would say he's a Bitcoin maxi. So slowly, the inception is happening. The inception is happening. I just want to say that. Yeah. But I totally agree that it's kind of just like, okay, you know, you can look around the world today and be like, oh, the world's horrible, right? And there are case study upon case study to honestly back that up. Horrible things happen every day. However, if you look back to like the 18th century, we have magnitudes of more people that have better access to basic needs today, right? And kind of like what you were saying, Grant, and I'm going to go off a little tirade here about soccer or football or however you call it, wherever you're from. The U.S. men's soccer team, okay, they get better all the time. And they're actually like pretty good if they have their full team and they don't have a coach who thinks it's like communist kickball. They're a pretty good team. But the problem is the rest of the world is always just getting better. And so I see that was kind of like my side. Maybe Brian will get that. I don't know. I guess I'm assuming Brian knows about football because he's from the UK. But the point being here that I am totally in a line with you guys, that it feels like you have the IMF, you have the Federal Reserve, you have all of these people that are put in place basically to make sure the game moves ahead fast enough that you don't really know how to stop it, but slow enough that you don't realize that it's happening, right? Because we're just talking about, you know, if I made 48,000 even coming out of college and I graduated in 2009, that was pretty cool. That was like good, you know? And now you're saying 120,000 in a yacht. I know most people, especially in international development, that if you gave them 80,000 in a kayak, they'd be happy, you know? So I think it's all perspective. And I guess I'll pass the, the good news on poverty. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I saw the link you just dropped for everyone.
Yeah. So I'll comment on that real quick. Bono, of all people, yes, the musician, yes, the global impact worker, did a TED Talk back in 2013 now. It's been a minute, and we should check these numbers. But back then, he did a TED Talk on, folks, good news on poverty front. Things are getting better, and we're allowed to continue to fight hard for people who are struggling. We're allowed to continue to fight hard for poverty, for healthcare, and hopefully universal healthcare, for education, for financial education. We're allowed to fight for all of that and still admit things are getting better. Like, it's almost like you have to create this world where it's getting worse, so we have to do something. The Sally Struthers sort of pitch, you know. But I did want to call this quote out real quick. Jeff posts, all animals are created equal, and some animals are more equal than others. I've heard this quite a bit, and yes, Jeff, I've heard of football and soccer. I just don't pay attention to American football. But thanks to Ryan Reynolds, I now pay attention to global football with Wrexham. Was that it? Wrexham? Is that
I think that's the right one. Yeah.
So yes, Jeff, I want to have a beer with Jeff. He's super cool. Now, if you don't mind, Aussie, we were talking before we came on the show about a tweet from Pompliano. And I want to touch on it real quick because we both kind of called out some goofiness with this tweet. And I think it goes in the vein for where do you look for positive news? And If it's okay, I'm going to read the quote real quick. And then I'm sure Jarrett will be back in a second. He had a doorbell emergency. A. Pompliano, who I generally follow and generally like, says American consumers are broke. They have no savings. Their credit card debt is piling up. Interest rates on their credit cards are skyrocketing, which is interesting. Wage growth has been negative for 2 years. Food costs are up 11% in the last year. This is disastrous for the average family. And this was Grant's red alert, trigger alert. And I've brought up some statistics that I think that this is a misstatement or a misrepresentation entirely. But Austin, you had some feedback immediately that caught you that was off from this tweet. So what was some of the highlights you caught, if you're ready to answer that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, number one, that consumers have no savings. Savings are coming down, but the reality is that the average American had record high savings during the pandemic even in 2022, and we're actually even seeing personal savings rate. It had been falling for most of 2022, but it's just started to uptick in heading into 2023. It had hit about 3.4%. It hit 2.5 at the bottom, and now it's climbing towards 4.5% as a personal savings rate in the U.S. So savings rate is climbing, and yes, their savings are a little bit depleted because of inflation, but people are still saving money, and they still have savings. Wage growth has been negative.
Yeah.
No,
that's not the data I get. Let me first pause on the savings because I have the data. Synchrony Bank posted data from Vanguard as well as the Federal Reserve SCF data. A few quick notes on this. In 2022 from Vanguard, the average 35-year-old had $37,200 in average retirement savings. Let me be specific. Retirement savings is obviously different than cash savings. Like we grant that. But retirement savings was up to $37,200, which for retirement is not a lot of money. Let's grant that. But it is something compared to debt numbers. The Federal Reserve, the median retirement savings from the Federal Reserve for 2020, projected for 2023, is $13,000 for the same age bracket. The numbers did go down. And the numbers, there is a disparity in those numbers between Vanguard's and the Federal Reserve's different sources. But my point is even if it's on the low end, 13,000 to the high end, 37,500, compared to credit card debt, looking at the credit card debt I've got right here, the same age bracket, let's look. The same age bracket has only $5,000 in credit card debt. And so to me, I look at savings versus credit card debt and I go, well, any credit card debt's not the greatest, especially with inflation where they're living on some of that, but they could pay it off at a swipe if they really wanted to. They could pay it off at a swipe. Now, who wants to go into any savings for any of that savings is for savings? Correct. Absolutely correct. But when you put, and this is what we call in media and messaging, digital rhetoric. When you put one sentence next to another, you don't have to say I'm comparing the two for the passive reader to compare the two. And so to me, it's lazy journalism. And then it says interest rates on credit cards are skyrocketing. Food for thought, interest rates do not skyrocket on credit cards. It's 22 to 24%. It's the same. Now, it's a ridiculous percent. And it compounds at a stupid rate. And maybe that's what he meant. But if that's what he meant, I call out lazy journalism.
Yeah, well, you guys have worse interest rates on credit cards than we do. We get between 20 and 22% on most credit cards. So another plus for Canada up here.
What does that look, Jared? Does any percent?
I just think that Austin has to remind himself he's Canadian. That's how worried he's becoming. His brain is just.
he's reading these numbers and realizing, wait. Oh, thank God, these aren't numbers that affect me. Okay.
So I'm glad you guys got into this because I think it's a really important thing. And if you are interested at all, go on.
I'll link Twitter. To the tweet. I'll put the tweet.
Yeah. If Greg could put the tweet, I wonder what data he pulled this from. There's no, I got this from this source. It's all very clickbaity stuff. But if there's anything I know about Pompliano, he's not going to share something that he knows to be false, if that makes sense.
I agree.
Now, he may share stuff, as anyone does on social media, to engage clicks, right? To stir conversation. And if you go into the comments, there's a really good comment. This guy says, which wage growth? Are we measuring against inflation or just wage growth? From historical norms, it's actually grown faster, but currently with the pace of inflation for now, from a relative pace percentage year on year, it's grown higher. So I think it's really interesting to see what he's checking in on. And I also want to call out the fact that $5,000 in credit card debt is a fucking lot. It's a lot when you're at 22%.
That's more than my credit card limit. So
bro, I know a guy who buys houses with his credit card. Okay.
Yeah, you're now officially not a gringo, because the second you open up a credit card in the United States, they give you like 30,000 because they know what's going to happen. They know you're going to have Gucci shoes on, LeBron James jerseys, and you're going to be screwed in 5 minutes. So
that's the safety and protection of the Canadian government for which Austin works. That's so that it's working in his favor.
He's a government man. But anyway, I think I actually do want to call it. I think that's a shit ton of debt. I think that's a shit ton of debt when you're at 22%. And the way that compounds, if you're barely making ends meet, let's say you have $500 left over every month. All right. Yeah. To pay it down is going to take 10 months. And that assumes nothing else happens. That assumes your food basket continues to stay the same. That assumes you're that disciplined to take all your extra money and not go out with your friends, not go to the bar for 10 months. And I say this only because I've had friends who have suffered, and I'm sure we all have, and maybe some of us even have. I've had friends who have died under credit card debt, who have had to go to court, and it's just totally destroyed their credit now. And they're just in a 5-year plan to build it back up to a place that's respectable, where they can then leverage it to buy things that are, maybe they don't want to pay for all at once. Yeah. So I think $5,000 at 22% with such low financial literacy and the consumeristic, you saw it on Instagram, somebody else has the kayak and now you want the yacht culture. It's a freaking lot. So I just want to call that out. I'm not really sure. Some of the other numbers here that I thought were interesting was the food costs are up 11%. I've heard that they're up to 16 or 17.
Yes.
So
I do think that's low.
Yeah. I think that those are, and the no savings was interesting to me because I do believe that Americans have some savings, but when you then compare it to their debt, their actual wealth is negative, right? They don't have anything. So,
well, I did hear once, and this is an old statistic, and I don't know the source of it, but it was I'll say an old rule of thumb or old wives' tale when I was in my early 20s, and that was the average American lives $200 over their means. So if their income is $5,000 a month, and when I was hearing the statistic, that would have been a great income, but not now. Then they were spending just to get by, so to speak, $5,200. But I know the plight of Americans is tough, and I know that inflation is high, but I know that people eat at DoorDash and do not cook their own food. I know that people are standing in the line at Starbucks, and these are individual stories compared to macro stories. But there is something to be said for, if I really wanted it in America, I could change my lifestyle and get it. Jarrett, you had a friend who retired to the islands, denying self and, not going out when his friends were going out. And I dug myself out of a very blight of financial poverty, literally, by applying discipline on these things. And so I hear these numbers and I go, yes, this is not encouraging. But per our entrepreneur conversation, and you mentioned financial literacy, whose fault is this? Or more importantly, aside from fault, forget fault, because fault is looking towards institutions. Whose responsibility is it to fix it. And I look towards other entrepreneurs who are taking ownership of their destiny as a guide stone for what I need to be doing myself, you know? And so like when I see these tweets from Pompliano, I see clickbait. And I ask myself, okay, what does he want for the reader? When he posts this, what does he want for the reader? Does he want them to be encouraged? Obviously not. Does he want them to feel heard? Maybe. And understood? Maybe. But I guess what I want for me and my friends is for us to be talking about things that someone who stumbles across this goes, I could apply that and change my life, if that makes sense. I don't just want to know what Jerome Powell is saying. And to their point, we're at minute 45. We should probably talk about how any of this applies to crypto, you know, being not crypto bros. But my hope is not just, oh, I got updates about Jerome Powell. That's cool. But where can I go apply some self-study and learn? What's going on? What are people building that I can participate and change my financial future? I guess that's what bugged me about this tweet, if that makes any sense. And Jeff is doing it with the Laughing Otter. Jeff says the Laughing Otter is all about making change by promoting positive news and the best in humanity. And Jeff, while I was yammering, I did bring the Laughing Otter homepage up. And I love it. I'm going to dive deeper into this. And I should have the last time you mentioned it. I'm remiss, and I'm looking at it now. So thank you for this. But guys, how does any of this tie to what's going on in crypto, man?
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Austin.
how does this tie into crypto? I mean,
yeah,
I think part of it has to do with the fact that if people aren't in a good financial spot, then people don't have discretionary money to spend on crypto. And crypto is right now still considered a risk-on asset. And so people aren't likely to gamble. They'll use the word gamble money in crypto. And so you don't have the liquidity or the volume or necessarily the size of the community to really take potentially Web3 businesses to the heights that they can reach, that they can compete against a Vanguard or a Fidelity. If we're talking about a wealth management fund, like we're talking about Berkshire Hathaway, like competing against Berkshire Hathaway for Web3. You're also talking about, you know, a Web3. We talked about Web3 press, just Web3 media. And it'd be really hard for Web3 media to take off with the size of the community that we've got in crypto. And unless people have the savings and the money available to participate in these things, it's a little bit hard for crypto to take off right away or to take off right now and to be fully adopted. But that's my takeaway, at least for now.
And you did make a note of some of the things Powell said were mixed, but somewhat encouraging for the future of at least stable coins and broader Web3 innovation. Like something he was saying supported some of that.
Yeah, he said that we shouldn't stifle Web3 innovation through regulation. So that was a big thing. For stablecoins,
this guy's got me all turned around, man.
Web3 for stablecoins, the future is a little bit more murky. It says he kind of said there's a place for them if they have the same requirements as basically comparable products within the existing financial sector. So what exactly that means is a little hard to figure out. I can't put it together right now, but basically there's space for it. They're considering it. They're exploring it. I mean, the U.S. and the Federal Reserve is working on a CBDC. They are looking at public blockchain and blockchain technology. And I think that is probably one of the most optimistic things that we can take out of this speech.
I want to say that for a guy who's been appointed, he's the most political I've ever heard to talk. because he just will speak for 30 minutes and you don't know what he said. You know, he's like, I'm scared of dogs. And he also like has a kennel out back with 50 like German Shepherds. So it's just like the guy doesn't make any sense.
Your metaphors kill me, bro.
I will say that there's been some really bullish news and I think one of the things on the podcast I just put out on More Than Blockchain is I'm really talking, and I want to hone in on this more, that there's a lot of noise out there in crypto, and we actually are part of it. We're part of noise. And I would say every once in a while we have some signal, but you know, we have to get through our own noise to find our signal. And amongst everything that's happened, you know, with maybe, you know, Bitcoin's gone down $2,000 or $3,000 in the last like day or two, whatever. Amazon is said to be launching an NFT marketplace in April. So you're taking 180 million Prime members in the United States, all who spend money on Prime, even when they don't have money because their credit card's attached and it takes 2 clicks and it shows up on their doorstep two seconds later. They're going to tie the NFTs to physical products, which I think is great. So it's kind of like a phygital play. I just think that that makes the most sense. And I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do it, but the point is that Amazon and NFTs are now going to be a synonymous thing. And I'm super, super bullish on that. And I also want to echo exactly what Austin says. You know, we have Not Crypto Bros. Grant has his show. Austin has his show. I have my show. And I look at numbers and they're growing. If you look out over a long enough period of time, you don't see the growth maybe daily, but like Austin said, we're not going to have people flooding in to find our content until 2024, 2025, when this thing starts to take off again. And, you know, the economy looks a little bit different and people have, as Austin, I love how we put it in air quotes, discretionary spending. And they're like, you know what, let me hop in Robinhood and buy $20 of Ethereum. Let me hop in my Venmo app or my Cash app or whatever app or PayPal and buy $20 of Bitcoin. So we're making content right now for very few select people. Like the fact that Jeff and Brian are here, there are very few people that actually stuck around from 2021 to 2023. 41% of new wallets were created in 2021. So half the people, or 40%, I shouldn't jump up that. 4 out of 10 people in the room, or 2 out of 5 people in the room just showed up. They just showed up to the house party. And I was around so many people and I could call them out here. They know who they are in 2021 who were like Web3 or die. They had their NFT project. Now they're onto AI. Now they're onto something else. Now they're doing a completely different play. So I guess I just wanted to call out this moment because it feels like it's a really interesting moment because we're really kind of getting into the depths of the bear market. I always thought the depths of the bear market was going to be a year out from the halving, which would be the end of March, early April. So we're kind of in this lug period where nothing is really going to happen. And we just need to focus on the future because there's always going to be this noise, right? Bitcoin's going to go up. Bitcoin's going to go down, right? This new NFT project's going to be a rug. This new NFT project's going to go to the moon and we missed out and the FOMO is going to kick in. But I just think I wanted to call out that, and this is kind of like a shout out, even though we're not at the end of the show, to say that if you're here now and you're listening to this episode and you're looking at the price daily and you're working on whatever you're working on, by 2025, 2026, you're going to be in a different place. Culturally, financially, probably, but culturally, you will have, been able to weather that storm. So, and I say that because honestly, in 2018 and 2019, I forgot about crypto. I never sold, which was sweet, but I just turned it off because it wasn't fun to be around. And I hadn't made the connections that I've made now. I've spoken with Jeff a little bit. He's phenomenal. He's a Canadian lost in Australia. And I'm going to segue right in there and go to his comment here. He says, the biggest thing that the US needs to do is raise the minimum wage. Australia just got ranked #1 in the world as the richest country in the world per capita. A high minimum wage is a big part of this because on minimum wage spend, because people who are on minimum wage, they don't hoard, they spend. Now, the first thing I want to say is I completely agree. The people who are closest to the economic edge are always going to spend the most. This is why conditional cash transfer programs all around the world exist, because they know if they give someone who's on the edge of poverty a certain amount of money so they can buy their beans, rice, egg, and chicken, they're going to spend all of it. So it just goes right back into the economy. The other thing I will say, though, is raising the minimum wage does not help with inflation. As you start to pay people more, things become more expensive, and it's this vicious cycle. That's where we get back into this thing. Do we want a recession or do we want inflation? We can't have both. And we need to kind of decide. And we have Jay Powell to decide essentially for the planet. So I'll throw this to either of you to talk
Well,
about.
I
Jeff's
would like
point
to
here.
reflect on the minimum wage. And Jeff, I would seriously like to talk about it because I'd like to kindly disagree from this regard. I'm in the state of Florida in the United States, and we've had a minimum wage at around $10 around the minimum wage. And a lot of people have, obviously been asking for a minimum wage hike. We passed a minimum wage hike about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now. I immediately saw business owners give up because inflation was still high. They were already paying high for supplies. They were already paying high for cost of goods sold. And now their already largest expense suddenly was getting 50% higher. Now, I know that there is a rollout period of a minimum wage hike, but literally I can name people of my clients, and I have website design clients. I manage their website. They were talking about innovating. They were talking about hiring. They were talking about benefits. And as soon as that passed and their employees started acting like they were already owed that new minimum wage and started pushing back and started demanding, and in the new minimum wage, we haven't even hit that $15 mark, but the paradigm has already shifted. It's already hard to find talent. It's already hard to hire anybody. And I can name companies that have closed because of this. So I don't know what the difference is. Maybe this is the growing pains. Well, they are just not viable companies anyway. The average mom and pop company in America makes less than $100,000 a year. It's one person maybe bringing home $36,000 to $42,000 a year and maybe two part-timers at best. That is the average business.
Interesting, because
that's the average business.
Because that's like we've had our minimum wage is at least $15 here, and it's been slowly climbing in Canada, across the country. And yes, we've seen food prices at certain cafes had to rise, and some businesses have suffered. But overall, our reality matches more what Jeff is saying. Overall, the average person is doing better because of higher.
The average employee.
Wage. Well, the average employee and the average business is doing better because they like everyone is doing better because if more people at minimum wage have a higher minimum wage, they can spend more money. I
get trickle down economics, but maybe I am just too close to my clients who are business owners who are like, I'm quitting. I can't get by. There's no future for me because what I can't do is raise prices. If I go from a $10 an hour minimum wage to a $15 an hour minimum wage, what's the first thing I'm going to do as a business owner? Raise my prices.
Yeah. And Grant, I completely agree. And it's actually really interesting that maybe Jeff and Austin see this just from a different angle than we do. Maybe. And I think both Canadians.
And so maybe there's a situation in Canada. Maybe there's components in Canada that do cover some of this. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that there could be social programs that maybe ease these things out. There could be actual regulation about how, we're paying employees now. You can't raise your prices. Whereas in the United States, it's like, no, the donut shop now is $15 an hour. My donuts are now 20% more.
Yeah.
Because in the 70s with the gas, all of a sudden the OPEC was like, oh, by the way, it's going to be instead of $3 a barrel, it wasn't $3 a barrel, but just, instead of $3 a gallon, it was like $12 a gallon, whatever it is. It went up exponentially. So then what happened was everyone started to get raises at the highest level. And then that raised prices. And then at the lowest level, everything just started to go up. But that's how the inflation happened in the 70s, at least as far as I understand it. And so that takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight. But when you look back, it looks overnight. So I do think
maybe it's the growing pains. Maybe it's just the growing pains.
And I do agree with Jeff. I do think that raising the minimum wage is a really important thing. If you look at the most affluent states in the United States, they all have very high minimum wages. New York's minimum wage is $14.20. Massachusetts is $15. And then if you look at some of the poorer states like Mississippi, and I'll just Google this right now, it's not near 15. I'll tell you that much. Now I understand that it's 725. Now I understand the cost of living is different, but still, 725. I mean, gosh,
chicken or the egg on that. It's hard to track Like, is New York affluent because it has a high minimum wage? Or, you know, did it jack up taxes, launch a bunch of programs that support the small business owners?
You're spot on. The tax situation between Mississippi or, you know, in a Republican held state and then a super Democratic like New York or Massachusetts or Hawaii or California,
Or Canada.
the tax, yeah, or Canada, the taxes are going to be higher. But taxes aside, it is interesting to see if you just look at minimum wages and you look at quality of life, there's totally, it's not just correlation, there's causation there, especially in the United States.
I would like to know, yeah, this is now super intriguing. I'd like to know the differences in countries because I don't doubt, Austin, the experience you've seen, but I see the mechanism here and it's devastating. It's devastating to the average. To a manufacturing company that has fat cats at the top, not so much. But that's not the average company. The average company is a very small business that's already struggling to get by. Just pull up the SBA data on the average company. And you're like, oh, I can see, you know, if we were maybe in a fair tax situation or if there was programs like you're saying, but the mechanism I see it to the small business owner is, and maybe it filters them out. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they didn't have a sustainable business model with enough profit margin anyway. And this was just the final straw. And I could grant that too. They weren't going to make it on the long haul anyway, and they need to be doing better economically anyway. That could be. But I'd love to see more. So I guess we didn't mean to make this the economic episode.
No, but it's important. It's important because right now the economics, I mean, in a bear market, the economic, the macro and the micro should be topics of conversation because there actually have been a lot of things that have happened lately in crypto, but I think we called out a couple of them here, but that should be, you know, the lion's share of the conversation. Whereas when you're in the bull market, it's just going to be a completely different conversation. You know, you're not going to be talking about like what the Fed is doing at that point. I don't think. But why don't we go ahead and do a quick round of shout outs? Austin, who do you got?
Who's your shout out? I want to shout out to my co-host Piter. I also want to shout out my two other big contributors for my fund and trading bots, Ghost and Adamus. Great guys and building alongside me in Web3. And I want to shout out you two because you guys really help push me in Web3 and keep me motivated. So let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Quick shout out to my staff today. You know, I know we're talking a lot about business, but I do have a really good team today. We closed 2 new deals today. That was super good. One of them closed literally while I was on the call. Phenomenal deal. And I want to shout out those awesome people because as much to Jeff's point, the real story is not a macro story. The real story is a micro story of small people doing big things for them in their heart. That's my shout out today. What do you got, Jared?
I want to shout out Jeff and Brian. Jeff is all the way in Australia. Brian, I believe, is in the UK. And I think that's cool. I'm in Colombia. Austin's in Canada and Grant's in Florida. So that
I don't know where George is. Is George in Canada too?
I'm not sure where George is. Yeah. Otherwise I would have called out his location there. But anyways, I just think that's super cool. None of us have really probably ever met. And we're just out here grinding and figuring it out and talking about crypto. And in like 3 or 4 years, we're going to look back and be like, wow, remember those days? So anyways, follow us on YouTube. And actually, I want to give a caveat. Please. If you follow us on YouTube, Grant and I are starting to really publish the Not Crypto Bros episodes just because we have a little bit bigger platforms. So follow us on YouTube, Grant's at Grant Sparks and me at More Than Blockchain, and to get all the Not Crypto Bros episodes. And then on Twitter, we're still Not Crypto Bros, and on LinkedIn, we're still Not Crypto Bros. So if you want to reach out and, you know, say hi to us or whatever, please do it there. And we appreciate everyone for showing up, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, and let us know how we can be supporting you, Jeff, George, all of you guys that come in and out. Please let us know how we can be supporting you because we want to support builders doing awesome things. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a killer afternoon. Take care.